cross-jurisdictional approach is going to mean. In my own country, Ghana, we see that the level of awareness of the issues is not as great as in some countries. These kind of issues have not become election issues yet. The general public is not following this as closely as they could. And this is why the Internet Universality indicators and the report that has just come out officially around Rome, rights, openness, access, and multi-stakeholder, this is why it's so important, because it gives people something that they can use to advocate around, something that they can discuss in terms of the implications for our future. I was just listening to the discussion earlier around some of the laws that have been passed, and that's why I mentioned cross-jurisdictional, because in my view, there are certain laws which are being passed in some countries at the moment that may prove to be quite inconsistent with the approaches that have been officially taken, whether they be in UNESCO or whether they be at the level of the African Union. And so we need to do that research, we need to do that analysis, and the Rome indicators give us a way of doing this without necessarily making it a conflictual type of situation. It is just a factual type of situation. What is the kind of internet that we all said we subscribe to? We all agreed it should be rights-based. We all agreed we wanted an open internet. We wanted people to be able to access regardless of where they are, regardless of their level of ability, their language, whether they're female. We wanted it accessible, and we wanted it to be inclusive so that people of all kinds could gather around and discuss and figure out which policies make the best sense. And so I will leave it there and just say that there's so much more we can do with the indicators in Africa than we've done so far. We have the official reports that come out from the country-led process by UNESCO. But I believe that there's room to have subsidiary reports around certain key issues that may be of greater relevance for a given country. So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to see this, and that the whole process of taking the indicators forward is going to take off and will no longer be, it will be something that will be, as we like putting it in Africa, it will become localized so that we have fully taken it on board and we run with it. But I'm inviting all researchers to get involved, regardless of discipline, and to really understand what these indicators are about. They are not a set of indicators that require us to compare ourselves to others. They require us to analyze what is happening in our societies. But I still think it will be interesting to see the differences that we have between African countries. And as I said, listening to the conversation earlier, my question will be, some of those differences, how are they affecting innovation? How are they affecting our ability to use digital transformation to really reap development dividends? There's so much more we can discuss, and I wish you all the best in your deliberations. And congratulations once more to the entire team for organizing this event. And I do apologize for not being able to show my face well. I am in Asia at the moment and using hotel bandwidth. So my apologies for that. And one of these days, I really look forward to being with you in person, not just on video. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your words there, Dorothy. I think most important is the words being communicating. We'd love to see you, but I think there's a whole lot more power in the words that you have shared, in the encouragement to build a community of researchers, individuals to drive this work forward, which is what this interaction engagement is about, getting people aware of what the indicators are about, what Rome is about, and building a sense of affinity for it. And we're excited to have a very broad spectrum of participants, even though they may not be openly visible from the different countries. We've gotten researchers, of course. We have gotten some government participation. In Uganda, we've had law enforcement present, researchers, civil society, journalists. So we're really excited about the profile of individuals sharing this space with us today. And the reason we do this is because at the Collaboration in International Policy for East and Southern Africa, otherwise known as CIPESA, we are all about building relationships. We're all about forging way forward in a manner that allows for the enhancement or progression of digital rights legislation, of digital rights policy for individuals, for communities, and for states. So we're excited to have UNESCO sharing their indicators with us, because that is one of the ways in which we see this work can be progressed further. A bit more about CIPESA. This is what we do. As mentioned earlier, we convene people. We do these convenings based on a lot of in-depth research that we conduct on a regular basis on a whole host of topics, including data privacy, civic participation, access to information, freedom of expression, and a whole lot more, including the presence of violence against women online. How do you create safer spaces for online communities? How do you maneuver past content moderation? What is happening? Is it promoting self-censorship? Is it encouraging more civic engagement? So these are just some of the issues and areas that we deal with as an organization. And today I am glad to be sharing this space with UNESCO alongside our country partners, including Protege Kuvi in Cameroon, Digital Shelter in Somalia, Namchue in Namibia, as well as UNESCO in Malawi. Welcome to you all who are joining us via webinars, and some of you actually convened in physical spaces to have your pre-session discussions in person and are now joining us in this space online. So welcome to you all. We're really pleased to have you here at this point in time. So once again, Dorothy, thank you. You're welcome to leave if you have to, as you have to. And on that note, I'd like to welcome Shanhong Hu from UNESCO to give us a bit of background. You'll notice that our agenda was open, and this is to allow for us to ask questions as we go along. Please do use the opportunity to engage, to raise your hand so that we can attend to some of these issues sooner rather than later. As mentioned earlier, we're trying to build a community of practice, and we'd be keen to understand people's thoughts, their reactions on the Rome principles, the implementation of the indicators, but also suggestions on how we can push this further after the session. So once again, Xianhong, welcome. You may take the stage.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, CIPESA, for organizing such a wonderful event. I also echo you to send my appreciation to the wonderful remarks given by Dorothy Gordon. She is not only our chair of the Information for All program, but also she has been literally a global advocate of the Rome principles and the humanistic digital transformation for so many years. I really appreciate all your wonderful guidance in this. So just let me start with not a very short PPT, and to give you more information about what we have been doing through this Rome framework. So I guess you could all see my PPT properly. Julia, it's okay, you can see my PPT?
Yes, we can see your PPT. Thank you.
Hello?
And we can see it, sorry, we can see it including the notes that you have. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I was just checking, is my PPT showing correctly?
We can see the presentation alongside your notes. You're visible.
Ah, okay, so let me see, this should be my, because I have two screens, so sometimes it's a bit tricky. So how should I manage this? Because when I click show full screen, it's jumped to my right screen. Okay, I know how to do it. Let me try again. So I'm move this to the right screen.
Now we can see your mailbox.
So now you can see the full screen, or you can still see my notes.
We can still see your notes, but it's okay since it's there's some French there which may be beneficial for the French speakers. So nonetheless, you're welcome to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. As Doris well put it, that Internet Universality stands for four broad principles, which are so fundamental. That's a consensus we have reached with all our 193 and member states back in
Please, Channel, your mic is a bit fuzzy.
Okay, so
we just need to speak up a bit more.
My mic. Okay, let me also turn up my speakerphone. Okay, that seems already maximum. How is it now?
It's fine. You can go ahead. We'll continue.
Okay. So how about you can see my screen as well now as well?
Yes, you can see your screen. We can see
okay, maybe I just want the full screen. I go for in this one. You can see it even bigger. I should really figure out my screen settings because I had a problem before as well. Sorry for this. So these four broad principles is what UNESCO's member states has reached a consensus upon in 2015. It was literally adopted by the member states as a resolution. UNESCO stands for four principles to shape the digital transformation, not limited to internet as already embodied in the concept called internet universality, but actually the four principles apply to the broadly digital ecosystems development. So first one, human rights based, we defend for all the rights online, internet freedom. Second, open internet. Without openness, no innovation. And thirdly, it should be universal to all, by all means, in all manner, in all languages. Last is about the governance model. Many African countries already embrace the multi-stakeholder participation. We are promoting this approach to be more inclusive at all countries level. As you can see, these four principles are so broad that we need to have the very concrete indicators to measure them. Otherwise, we cannot guarantee the implementation of these four principles at the national level. So these slides unpack as a quite a complex package of the indicator, because it's like you are measuring the elephant in the room. It's not an easy task. So basically, we have developed 5 categories of indicators on top of rights, openness, access, and multi-stakeholder participation. We have also added up a new category indicators on cross-cutting issues, because fundamentally the 4 dimensions are really cross-cut to each other. For example, gender equality, it's encompassing all the issues of rights, as Julia just mentioned, women's rights, women's security on the internet, women's literacy issues. And then we also have the cross-cutting issue like children, youth empowerment, and how the digital transformation can be used for the sustainable development and trust, security, and as well as legal, ethical issues. They are included in these cross-cutting categories of indicators. If you look at further to each I mean, look at vertically under each category. You see, a Rome indicator really takes a very broad approach to cover almost all the key dimensions of the digital policy. Under rights, we have a common theme to look at the performance and existence and the implementation of the existing policy, legal and regulatory framework relating to those fundamental rights of freedom of expression, right to access information, the freedom of association, and right to take part in the public affairs through internet, the right to privacy, the data protection, as well as the social, economic, and cultural rights, which really going beyond the narrow sense of the rights, take a very broad, comprehensive perspective of protecting all rights on internet, online, offline. And same approach applies to the openness. We look at how those open technical standards are being applied at the country level. Look at the market. If the market is also open to allow for small, medium enterprise startups, innovations. We look at also content, whether there are enough open content to be accessible by users, as well as the government, how our government are using open data, open government to provide the public services. Then under the access category, it looks like not only the policy framework, but also look at the physical connectivity usage as we usually measure at the first place. But also we go beyond this kind of physical access in terms of also affordability. We look at how equitable this and how much social inclusion has been considered in this access policy and the practice. Again, the local content, multilingual access and content, and the media information literacy competency, digital competencies of the citizens are also measured in this access category of indicators. Again, it's very comprehensive. Then on the multi-stakeholder participation, I would like to say that it might be the only existing indicators to measure this renovated governance approach. I look at whether there's a policy framework to guarantee the inclusive multi-stakeholder participation. It also looks at the national level. If there is a national IGF, if all similar format participation of all stakeholders to discuss the policies. Then at this category, interesting indicators about how these national stakeholders are able to join in the discussion at the regional and the international level. And how much, I mean, for example, I mean, CPESA, what they're doing now is exactly to cater for the collaboration above the national level at the regional and the pan-African level. Again, I also want to echo what Dorothy has mentioned about this cross-traditional and cross-border, cross-traditional aspect. Now, although Rome indicators really catered for the national assessment, but it does contain some regional and international aspects, and as an entirety, the national assessment results can be a very good basis to share good practice and learn the commonalities and the differences from other countries for improving the policies in a synergetical manner. So why UNESCO does this, and what's the essence of Internet Universality Rome framework? It's a very new, different project we are doing. Yeah, to be honest, I must say that it's really also because the challenge of the fast digital transformation, as everybody sense, we need an innovative approach to go forward. So essentially, by promoting Internet Universality Rome principles and indicators, we are really looking forward to having a kind of really human-centered, humanistic approach to guide the digital transformation at the national, regional, and the international levels. We are promoting not only Internet as a technology, but we are promoting the inclusive and meaningful access based on the universal values to benefit everybody without leaving anyone behind. As you already know that there are so many other existing indicators index by different organizations. What's unique about the UNESCO's Rome framework? I would say that there are quite a few. First of all, it's a indicator to measure the endorsed position by member states. So by this, it has a very strong power to get it through at the national level. Basically, we have seen the support from so many governments from the countries. So they are embracing this toolkit and you applying it and support it as a very constructive technical assistance. And this is really not for ranking. We are doing the assessment. It's a kind of national-owned, neutral, voluntary assessment. It's not for ranking states who's doing better than I don't know, but it's really to contextualize the findings and policy recommendations in a certain country's context, so that you have all have a tailored solutions and policy recommendations to improve. Other unique strengths like such a strong dimension on human rights are very broad, and also the special measurement of a multi-stakeholder approach, digital inclusion, as well as in the methodology process is also very unique. We are literally practicing this multi-stakeholder approach through this entire research and assessment process. I like to recommend you all to download our Internet Universality Indicator publication. It's a 150-page publication. It contains all the 303 indicators by categories and themes. I also like to signal to you it's available actually already in 8 languages, including English and French. I know we have both Anglophone and Francophone countries attending this workshop. So please do download the publication, and also there's a summary leaflet to give you a quick review of the entire content. Here I like to signal that 300 indicators is really a huge package of indicators. So we also identify 109 core indicators, the basic indicators, which we recommend for all the countries to start with. It can really save much time, it can save resource, can facilitate the assessment in an easier manner and more practical, because you need really a quick assessment to come up with the recommendations so we can improve. Otherwise, it can, the digital transformation is so fast. We also need to conduct it in a very efficient way. Basically, it's 109 indicator, the core ones already capture the essential dimensions of 5 categories of ROMICs. So that has been already used by 44 countries. It proves to be very relevant and useful. And for those countries who has more resource, we see more need to include more indicators, that's really warmly welcome. Like in Germany, like in many other countries, they measure the full package of multi-stakeholder indicators. Also, they pick on more advanced indicators from human rights, from access. So they will assess more than 109, maybe 120, 130. That would be really very much encouraged. In terms of the methodology, as I mentioned, that is also one of the unique strengths of this project. It's not just academic research, which means that you only need to find a researcher to collect data. No, we started by a policy dialogue, which means to establish a multi-stakeholder advisory board consisting of the representatives, focal points, experts from the governments, from the Ministry of ICT in many countries, and also we have the representatives from even from the judiciary, from the courts, from the parliament, policymakers, lawmakers. Also, we have the non-governmental actors to be widely present here, from private sector, from companies, from technical community, internet society, from the engineers, as well from the human rights advocates, from academia. So more or less, it's between 15 to 30 people the key actors from different sectors. They are engaged by this project to have the regular meeting to agree on the process, methodology, the intention to do this assessment. They also support the data collection because they are the key stakeholders in the digital transformation in every country. They are able to help the researcher to collect more data and to give the scientific guidance of the process. But they are really independent of the research itself, because we need to also commission a neutral, independent research team, collaborative research team for each country, who are able to cover all the omics dimensions. They are very different area. It's a quite multidisciplinary research. It's not one person's job. So this research team will be commissioned. They will communicate regularly with the multi-stakeholder advisory board to dialogue, to consult, and they will share their first draft. When they need to have difficulty in the data, we can also ask for MAB to support, and then the research team will come up with a report of assessment and draft recommendations. Then the last step will be organizing a national validation workshop involving all the members of MAB, but also wider national stakeholder to debate on those findings and policy recommendations to really agree on what should be the priority area and action to take after this assessment. So you see, it's a very transformative process. It's much beyond the research. The research itself is the key, because having a quantity data evidence approach, having a very strong recommendation report prepared will be the key to the success of the entire project. Of course, UNESCO is following you on all these steps to provide all kinds of support, and we're also assessing the impact with a certain time frame and monitoring the following up actions. So for any of your country present, I just heard from Malawi, Namibia, and Cameroon, Uganda. I mean, if you are interested, let us know. We can really start the process and support you. I think the following slides are quite concrete. Just to go very quickly. In terms of the report, we also provide the template for you to follow. For each national assessment report is supposed to have the chapter, each chapter dedicated to one category of indicators. For example, you have literally one chapter on human rights, containing the findings of the core indicators and also policy recommendations for rights, how governments, how private sector, how different stakeholders should do to improve the rights situation in the country. Same for other categories. And then we have a conclusion and a key priority recommendations building on those previous chapters analysis. So in this way, we can have all the countries assessment in a similar format. It's also good for us to share the challenges and also good practice across the country for regional and international interventions. The multi-stakeholder advisory board has really been operating very well. Although many people had a doubt how this kind of multi-stakeholder inclusive approach can really work. Actually, it's been working so well in all the countries which have picked out the assessment. As you can see, we have the project in Germany, in Mongolia, Cambodia, in Cote d'Ivoire recently launched. I mean, all the countries, the first step is to have such a strong advisory board imposed and then to have it functional. The challenges to how to get them really actively engaged, because in some countries, those representatives from the governments, from different actors, they can be very busy. They have no time to join so many meetings. So we need to manage it with a very feasible manner so that they are to use their time in a very efficient way. Then we organize the final validation workshop for every country to conclude the project. finalize report ready for publishing, for sharing. It's more or less a kind of 1 day or half-day event, a national event. In many countries, they take place on the occasion of the national IGF. Basically, you have all the stakeholders there to present the findings by the researcher, and then to discuss the recommendations by chapters. And the recommendation on human rights should be A, B, C, and D. Which one should be prioritized? Which one has been missing? Same for other categories. And at the end of the event, we agree on a set of the recommendations to be included in this final report. We also actually UNESCO, we also participate in this validation workshops by ourselves. And also we have an international advisor who is not who couldn't join us today. But we do have the international expert to observe and support this discussion. As I mentioned, that in the past 4 years of the implementation of ROMICS frameworks, we are so much welcomed by so many governments and the countries, stakeholders. In very fastly, we are rolling out in 44, 45 countries so far. As you can see, Africa is a really leading continent. We are having a total of 18 countries already deploying this assessment. Some have completed, like Benin, Senegal, Kenya. Some has just completed, not yet having the report published, and some we have just started to kick off the process. And our goal is to have all the African countries to be assessed before 2030. I hope all of you are here. You can support us and also support yourself too. I also recommend you to download all the published reports from those completed national assessments, particularly those from Kenya, from Benin, Senegal, but also I think the report from Brazil and Germany are of a high reference, because they are really also very well done, and the quality reports for you to refer to. Once you have finished your national assessment, and also you have come up with a very strong and quality national report, we would also consider publishing it by UNESCO through our UNESCO series of Internet Universality Indicator Assessment. I can see the process of publishing is it's complicated. It's also difficult. Basically, we want to showcase the best practice of the national assessment. We have a lot of quality control, so it takes some time, but we are here. My colleague, I think Karen and Xiaoji also in the audience. We have a team to support you through this once we have a good result from the national assessment. From our side, we are once your country starts to consider doing this assessment, we can also share a dozen of documents to help you for your research. The list of indicator, for example, the communication material, terms of reference to contract the researcher, etc. That's for the next step once you have already expressed your interest to do the assessment. Lastly, I invite all of you, whether your country is ready or not to do the assessment now or maybe future, I really recommend you and I invite all of you to join our IGF Dynamic Coalition of ROMICS. We have already liaised with hundreds of actors from different countries. If you join us and go to our website, register, you'll be a part. If you agree with the Rome principle, you like our project, then you can register to our newsletter. You can receive a quarter email and a news updates on the implementation update of the entire project. So you will learn about our events. For example, we are organizing 2 events almost every year at the IGF, Global IGF, which will be taking place this year in Africa, in Addis, in November, in the end of November and beginning of December. We are having a Day Zero event to showcase all the 44 countries processes. We're also having a dynamic coalition gathering on the last day on Friday, I think 2nd of November, to have all the actors there to take stock from your opinions how to improve this coalition and implementation. That's all I like to say at this point. And thank you again for the invitation and also for your interest. I'll be here for a while and to respond to the questions and receive your interest as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Xianghong, for that in-depth presentation.
Julia,
It's much appreciated. So at this point, I'd like to find out by a show of hands if there are any reactions to what has been presented, which is essentially a way into being a part or conducting an assessment in your respective country. As we have seen, there is room for a diversity of stakeholders to get involved, from the development of an advisory board through to the conducting of the assessments to interacting with the various stakeholders required to bring the assessment to life. So it's quite an exciting approach to assessing the internet in our respective countries. So at this point, we're welcome to queries. You can raise your hand, you can use the Q&A function as well. I see a hand raised. Let us see who has a query. We have a query from Bernard Sabiti from Uganda. We'll go ahead and unmute him. Bernard, please go ahead and state your question. Please remember to keep it short and concise so that we can now allow for others to make the contributions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you to our colleague from UNESCO. Very extensive and impressive presentation. I just wanted to ask, these indicators appear to be admissible at national levels. Have you considered how one would administer these at subnational level? Let's talk about, for example, in some of the countries down here in Uganda, we know countries are diverse. Sometimes the national picture really gets rather complicated when you go into the nitty-gritties of regions, districts, or other subnational units below the national level. How would these indicators play out at that level in order to get a full picture on how these principles of Rome actually look like at that micro level? Otherwise, thanks a lot for very enriching presentation.
Julia, shall I respond to this question or should I wait for more questions?
I think you can go ahead and respond to that question, please. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. If I understood you correctly, I think Mr. Bernard Sabati, so you are asking for how to what extent the ROMEX indicators can be used for the regional level more than the national level, or you want to ask for the sub-national level? I didn't get you very clearly. Could you also clarify?
It's about how this can be applied at sub-national level, below the national level. If one wants to assess the
sub-national level,
below the national level, not at the national level, like in regions or districts or these smaller administrative units of countries, where there tends to be different dynamics in terms of accessibility.
Excuse me, Bernard, you seem to be muffled in your sound. You could either type your query or just, there might be an issue with your settings. So please start again. Otherwise, Zhenhong, his question was around the use of the indicators at levels which are not national. So at regional levels, at district level, how can is there room for them to be used even at that level? Correct me if I'm wrong, Bernard.
Yeah, thank you. I heard you. So yeah, you are asking about under national level at the district local level? Yes, that's a question we have been discussing with some countries. For example, I received a request from a state of Malaysia. You know, it's they are having said many states want to do a state level assessment rather than the national level. So, Baknav, you want to add, or I can? Okay. So if that's the question, so far we have not yet explored this sort of sub-national level assessment. But I do see the value of having this kind of local assessment, because that as you see that in many countries, that's such a, particularly in very big countries, there's such a diversity across different regions, different districts, different states, different even different cities. I think your Rome indicators are equally relevant to assess the subnational level digital ecosystem as well. And I also see perhaps it can be even more useful, because more transformative, because at the state level, at the smaller district level, you can do a short crisp assessment and also come up with actions quite quickly. You identify the gaps, the problems. You can really have the actions in a much more swift manner than at a national level. And also, even by this kind of really example in one region, it can also be useful for other regions in the same country to refer to. So that's I'm personally very positive to this kind of experiment. Basically, the Rome indicators, essentially, they are really open for all the stakeholders at all levels. I even spoke with some organizations, for example, ICANN, the Internet Domain Name Corporations. They found these indicators are very useful for their corporate policy of human rights framework. They are using it. So you are really encouraged to use it really creatively and not limited to the national assessment. That's the basic principle. But on the other hand, since I work on those indicators on a daily basis, maybe many indicators, they were designed to measure the national landscape. So in terms of when you are on, sometimes they might not exist at the regional or district level. That might raise certain difficulties for you to apply the all indicators. But I think the majority they naturally apply to the sub-national level. I think we can have some follow-up to this thinking, because we are already rolling out in the first 4 years. We are going to do the impact assessment in the following year. We should definitely consider this in our assessment and monitoring initiative of UNESCO. Plus, we are also renewing the indicators themselves as mandated by our resolution every 5 years. And the ROMIX indicator needs to be reviewed, whether they have been getting obsolete and whether it should cover new issues, for example, climate, environment, ethics of artificial intelligence. I think this aspect of applying under the subnational level should also be considered in this review process. So that's my answer for the moment.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. It's interesting that we're here at this point where Romex itself is going to be going into review and bring into consideration some of the issues as raised by Bernard around the different layers of internet, the internet landscape that can be assessed. So we're really looking forward to the next iteration of that. We have some questions coming in from Cameroon, and we'll let Simone, who is handling that event alongside Pratesh Kavi, share her queries. Simone, you may have the floor.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Very succulent and sincere. I want to ask if during the IGF in Ethiopia, the World IGF, whether the IGF of Room X will also be having some activities during that IGF. Thank you.
It's a question for me.
Yes, the question was whether there'll be Romex activity at the IGF. We didn't get the name of the person carrying, but we just know that they're in Cameroon. But essentially, that's the question. Will there be something around Romex at IGF?
Yes, yes, we do. Thank you for this question. As I briefly mentioned in my presentation, we are organizing sessions at every IGF, including this year. In Addis Ababa, it will be 2 events on Rome. One is the day 0 on the 28th of November. It's Monday, the week of IGF Monday. In the afternoon, we have a 3-hour half-day event on Romex Internet Universality National Assessment presentation. So basically, we organize the presentation from every country, maybe not all, because many of them might not be able to attend, but we are organizing the national presentation from each of the regions to share the findings, the projects, the process, and to discuss the recommendations among the national researchers. That will be a very useful moment for you, for those countries you have not yet this assessment to observe how that assessment has been conducted in other countries, particularly in many other African countries. Then we have a second session. It will be on the Friday morning. It's 2nd of December. We have a dynamic collation of Internet Universality Rome. It's also an annual gathering. We are having that gathering every year at IGF because it's a IGF recognized dynamic collation on Internet Universality. We are inviting several ministers from Africa and other regions and the key partners, supporters from different stakeholders to discuss how we can again to advance the implementation of assessment in more countries, how we improve the current process, what are the lessons learned, more on the process, on the project implementation. So these 2 sessions will be really open to all of you to attend us. If you need more information, I will have to share with Julia after the meeting, the links, the program. I think actually, Julia, you are invited to both of the sessions as well. So you can share the information for the colleagues here to join us. I think it's a hybrid session for this year's IGF. You can all connect in and follow it remotely.
Great, thank you for that. We will be sure to share more information. It's good to keep engaging on this topic as the community grows. And yes, my email, juliet@cipesa.org, will be shared, including, I'll share it in this space as well. But beyond here, please do follow our social media accounts at cipesa.ug, or follow the hashtag Internet Freedom Africa, or the hashtag Gateways to Action, where we'll also be sharing further information on the developments around Romex in coming weeks, including in the lead up to the IGF, where we'll share a bit more for everybody to get involved as well. There is another question from Cameroon. Please go ahead and okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Jazian, and for Juliet coordination. I'm Avis Momeni from Cameroon. My concern is about the support. Let's say, what role can play our local UNESCO branch in this issue? How can they encourage to go forward, please? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I think you are asking about how our field office in Africa, in your region, how they are, what's their role. Actually, UNESCO, we are working as like one. Our HQ team and our field ops team will work like one team to support you. So basically, I will work very closely with our field office, our branches. We have an office in Cameroon. We have an office in many other African regions. Basically, it will be so they will be your direct contact to implement this process, and we will intervene whenever we are needed to provide the training, to join your meeting, to support maybe the financial, figure out the financial resources, help with the fundraising, to advocate, etc. So if you are interested to do the assessment in your country, so feel free to contact the UNESCO branch at the office you are already working with. I think my colleague they will equally revert to HQ to work together to support you. Or if you don't know your UNESCO branch or field offices in your country, you can directly contact me, and our HQ team will liaise with our field office to support you together.
Great, fantastic that there is in-country support where there are UNESCO offices. So yes, lots of opportunity to move the process forward. I'd just like to go into the Q&A section of Zoom, and I see we have a query about um, Dorothy's presentation. We will share it following the session, but we also have a query from Vincent Kumwenda in Malawi, who's asking how flexible the framework and indicators are to reflect the changing nature of the query. And this is in reference to understanding the progress made in the Web 3.0 and the new developments that are coming in with it, or which can be leveraged at scale. So essentially the question is around how flexible the frameworks are in light of emerging technology. Are they able to be assessed ready?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. It's a really very good question. It's a challenge. That's right. Every framework cannot be valid forever because the object we are assessing, digital technology, is developing really fast and far away, faster than what the policymaker can envisage. If you ask me currently, the existing assessment and existing framework of indicators, they are still able to capture maybe 80% of the internet ecosystem so far, but it has such a space to be updated to cover more latest progress of the technology, as you mentioned, Web 3.0. As also, I just mentioned that the fast development of artificial intelligence, the blockchain, the Internet of Things, there are so many new technologies we need to consider, and also the broader challenges of the environments, the climate change. It should all be considered in our follow-up renewal of the indicators. But on the other hand, as I said, we are going to renew our framework next year. Certainly, this point will be taken from there. But on the other hand, I also like to signal, since the ROMICS indicators that essentially is a kind of humanistic approach, there are many fundamental things that remain same. The challenge remains same for the new technologies and the old technology. And now internet is already getting this obsolete. And now we are talking everything digital. Even internet governance should become the digital governance, for example. But all those challenges are perceived on internet equally. They persist. They apply to new technology. For example, privacy. We never solved this challenge for the internet yet. And we see that the internet, that the privacy issues hugely challenged by the newly developed Web 3.0, and also by the artificial intelligence and data protection is again even a more burning issue for the new development of digital ecosystem. So I think the human rights issue are so classic. I mean, the basic framework, the principle, they are still valid. All we need to update is the technical parts to signal the new challenges, new implications from the new technologies. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So yes, the indicators will be responsive to emerging technologies, and we are looking forward to that. We have a few more hands. We had a hand from Namibia. It has disappeared. We have, okay, here it is. Please, let's get the query. Please state your name and your query. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hear yourself. Make your query.
Okay, my name is Benjamin Akinweje. I am a research student in informatics. So my, one of the questions I like to ask is, bearing in mind that this is my first time really getting to know about Rumex, and is the question that we see that on the continent or across regions, there are proliferal privacy regulations and policies. And also there's the increased concern or interest in data governance and cross-border data flows. Now, is Romex in one way or the other an enabler of some of these conversations? Because this is like the baseline infrastructure that supports, or your framework is looking at the baseline infrastructure that supports all of these interventions. Is it at conflict or enabler of some of these interactions? Because many of them are creating a lot of frictions across nations. So I don't know if from your early assessments or interventions of Romex, if it has been an enabler to making the frictions subside or increase.
Thank you for this question. I somehow feel this question is taking a similar angle from another question in the Q&A by National Go Devasius, also asking about if Romix is an enabler or at conflict with the numerous data governance frameworks or recent multiple privacy regulation across regions. That's a very profound question. That's in the past 4 years, when we put in place the national assessment, it's really, we said it's a national ownership. It's for this nation states to diagnose its problems and maybe also progress, and then to formulate the actions to improve the policy at national level. Yeah, but as you rightly pointed out, the internet jurisdiction, internet regulation, internet governance, they really goes beyond the borders of the nations in many ways. I mean, on the human rights, for example, the free flow of information, the content moderation by the digital platform. I mean, the takedown. I mean, there are many things that there are so many conflicts between the different jurisdictions. Some content can be banned in country A, but it cannot be banned in country B, and some users in country C cannot access the information that country B can. So that's a lot of this kind of conflicts. So I also received a suggestion that although the Romex indicator was not designed 4 years ago to support solving, to be an enabler, to be a solution, or to support the solution finding a regional solution to those regional and cross-border problems. But it does have a value to help. I think, I don't know if Doris is already there, because she pointed out that the issue of cross-jurisdictional issue is getting more and more crucial for many key issues, even the privacy, GDPR, how it's being applied by different countries, and also implemented differently by different stakeholders. So at UNESCO, we're also discussing in the following up monitoring and impact assessment. We are thinking we should maybe come up with a regional report of Rome, and also the global report of Rome. Maybe every year we aggregate the findings and the discoveries, outcomes from national report, and we make it into a regional report. For example, we can have, for example, a regional Africa, Internet Universality in Africa. We can aggregate the findings we have from different African countries to see to what extent we can aggregate those results, and also to identify the common challenges between among the countries, and also to identify those conflicts issues between the countries to figure out a broader solution for certain challenges. And for the short term, we already started to experiment in Central Africa. We are going to launch the assessment in Congo DRC and the Congo Republic next week. Actually, we intended to do 5 Central African countries. Perhaps we are trying out. We can eventually come up with a sub-regional of African Rome report to check to what extent the Rome can be valuable to solve those supranational and regional issues.
Fantastic. Thank you for that insightful responses. I see many questions are coming up, but in light of time, I'd like to also give a chance for the audience to, hear from those who have been through an assessment, what value they found in it, the process of being a part of it. So we have experiences to be shared from Kenya and from Ghana. So Shanghong, you're welcome to respond to the Q&A. Otherwise, we will take a bit of a diversion here and listen to Grace Gidaiga, who led the assessment for Kenya. Grace, are you available to share your experience?
I am available. I am here.
Fantastic. So yeah. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. I can't see the features for the camera, for the micro. Okay, I've seen the microphone. So it's okay. I'll still share. There's no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to allow me to present the Kenyan case. I think Kenya, we were among the first countries to present, to do this assessment. And so that was in 2019. And what we did is that we were able to assess the key indicators. So within that, we were able to establish a multi-stakeholder advisory board. And then we built a collaborative research team that comprised of 5 key lead researchers and 5 assistants. And then we had one editor who looked at the entire document and pointed out what were the weaknesses. And then the document went into editing. So we also developed an action plan. We gathered data, we analyzed the data, and then we wrote the report and made the recommendations. We were able to have a national validation multi-stakeholder workshop that we got more comments. And then out of that, we were able to finalize the report. So what has been happening in the last 2 years, because we completed our report in 2020, is an assessment and monitoring, and just looking at how whether the indicators are being how far they have gone, whether they are being implemented, and what are the weaknesses. Now, out of that, before I think I talk about what we learned and our experiences. And you will excuse my noisy background. I am in another meeting and I've been unable to find a quiet place. Is that after 2 years, we have actually embarked on stage 2, which is to review what has happened in the last 2 years. And so what has happened is that in the last 2 years, between 2020 and now 2022, like you all know, we got into COVID, and there have been dynamics that have been played by COVID. And so what we are assessing right now, we are going through the indicators. And what we are doing is, number one, is to look at the impact of COVID-19 and how this has affected the indicators. So we are updating the statistics, the laws, the policies that have come in place in the last 2 years, the regulations that have been amended or updated or have been put in place. We are also looking at the developments that are currently happening and implementation aspects. In Kenya, fintech has really grown. We've also had the issue of elections and technology that we had not considered. We also are looking into issues of online gender-based violence that has actually increased with elections. And so we are looking at all these developments that are happening and how they impact the indicators. So we are also updating our charts, our visuals, and the current data, and also trying to show what progress has been made in the last 2 years, what has changed, what is the status quo, and whether there has been any decline, what are the gaps that have hindered the development. And of course, what we need, we will be finalizing our report, I think, in another 1 week. We've kind of delayed because we were affected by the elections, and because Kictanet was also observing, deployed a technology-based observer mission, so that affected the timing. But we will be communicating what we have found out in the next review, which will be our second report. So what have we learned out of this process? What we learned is that I think three key components that we learned as Kenya is that it is very important to conduct these internet universality indicators, because number one, they sort of assess or indicate the temperature of where internet policy and other concerns are. And then we've also realized, because we host the annual National Internet Governance Forum, we actually realized the Internet Governance Forum is informed by these indicators. So whatever the issues are every year, when you go back to the indicators, you find that actually the indicators inform the discussions, the debates that happen at national and ultimately in the international Internet Governance Forum. So we also realized one of our learning is that we learned that it's very possible to collaborate and work together, different stakeholders in conducting such a research. And then we also realize that studies of this nature are very important, as they curate many issues at a one shop, unlike where you find different studies, disparate studies on privacy, on surveillance, on internet governance in different places. The Internet Universal Indicators curate them in under one roof. We also learned that it is very important to actually have such groundbreaking studies as they trailblaze and can be used as a tool that guides advocacy, any advocacy process, and that is evidence-based, especially when you're conducting advocacy. But most important is that they help a lot in monitoring the developments in a country. And I want to end there, Juliet, and maybe take questions. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much. The Kenya. Yes, I can hear you. I was saying thank you for that very concise report from Kenya on how you've utilized the indicators, and we look forward to the revisions that are being done by you, and we look forward to sharing those as well onwards with the community that is being built here. I'd like to then perhaps we could allow Simon Peter from Ghana to also share the experience in that country. So we've got an experience from West Africa, an experience from East Africa, and we're excited to have these both shared in this space. Simon Peter, are you available?
Yes, I'm available. Thank you, Juliet.
Fantastic. So welcome to the screen. We are going to let you share the Ghana experience before we take questions and go back to addressing some of the earlier questions as well. We hope that in experiences, some of the participants are getting answers to some of the questions they would have otherwise had as well. So Simon Peter, please.
Thank you, Juliet. I hope you are all doing well. Yes, it's been interesting working on the IUI National Assessment for Ghana. We've submitted our report. It's going through publication, and we hope to see the final publication soon. So some of the lessons learned. So let me say that we are a team of 5 that worked, core team of 5 that worked on this project from the development house. And in terms of a brief background about the report, I would say that what we found is that Ghana has a very strong regulation or regulatory framework when it comes to the internet ecosystem. And as far back as 1960 laws, some of those 1960 laws are still relevant in regulating our internet space. So for instance, for the rights, we have the laws on the Data Protection Act, the Cyber Security, right to information, and so many other acts, including our criminal codes and all that. So how do we build interest in our indicators? Personally, we feel that capacity building is the way to go. And in terms of this interest, we really have to up our game when it comes to dissemination, because most of the time, a lot of such research work will be done and it will just lie on the shelves. So dissemination is very key. For instance, we all know the SDG. SDGs have become a household, term. SDGs are known by everyone. So the ROM-X should also be something that would match up to the knowledge that people know about SDGs. And then that is one way we can get so many people to be interested in this. And another way is to also get academia really involved, and also the ICT practitioners involved. The approach we used includes stakeholder consultation, stakeholder engagement, interviews, focus group discussion, and of course we did some literature review, and that is how come we found a number of the laws and acts that genuinely and strongly fit for the framework for internet ecosystem. So how these support, I mean, how stakeholder support can help the internet universality indicators and the digital landscape in my country. I feel our report is rich and there is some kind of data in there which can be used by anyone. It's much more scientific. So it again comes back to what I earlier said about dissemination. And in terms of our report, we also realized that there is a lot of diversity to all that we did. We took some data from young people. We took data from women. We took data from the MAP. MAP means multi-stakeholder advisory board. And all these people contributed to whatever we found. And then we also realized that there is no policy on free and open source software and OERs. So we feel our authorities will pick this up. And then in terms of accessibility to data, we have a lot of data, but sometimes accessibility becomes very difficult. And especially for our people living with disability, I think we also need to do some work in there. But fortunately, I know there is an upcoming training by the World Bank in conjunction with our Ministry of Communication on some of these things to address digital literacy, to also address accessibility issue, to build people's capacity when it comes to people living with disability and the internet or ICTs. So basically, I feel it's something good that can help each and every country and each and every institution, because we now look at internet from different, from accessibility, from cross-cutting issues. So internet is not just seen as something for technocrats or something for technicians or something for people in the ICT industry, but internet is looked from other dispensations, from other dimensions, because before this assessment, most people, I mean, the people we spoke to, never even thought that internet has gotten to a stage where access to internet is even a right, maybe a non-justiciable right and all that. So Juliet, I think I will pause here. If there are some questions, I would be happy to handle them, but I think it's a wonderful thing. It's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both Grace and Simon Peter for sharing their experiences around conducting assessments in their respective countries of Kenya and Ghana. And on this note, I'd like to find out if there are any reactions or queries that you might have for them from the floor, based on the experience of having been through an assessment. You're welcome to put your queries into the Q&A or to raise your hand so that you can voice out your query. Once again, thank you very much to Grace and Simon Peter for sharing your experiences. I see a hand from Ndapanda Nekongo. Would you like to raise your query here? But also please note that Shan Hong is responding to questions in the Q&A section, so please do look out for that as well. So we are multitasking here today to make up for time, but also to get as much into the conversation, the discussion this afternoon. So Ndapanda, please go ahead with your query.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much to both the speakers. That was really informative. My question is for Simon. I really enjoy the fact that the focus is that you speak about how do we get this into the public, how do we make this more pervasive and you know, have these kind of discussions be as popular as the SDGs are. So my question to you would be, have you already identified intervention programs other than what you've mentioned with the World Bank on how you can get the findings that are relevant to the average citizen on the street through to them in order to start the discussions? Thank you.
Yeah, Juliet, can I respond to it?
Yes, you may go ahead.
Okay, so the workshop or capacity building by World Bank has, well, no direct relationship with the work that I led, but I know from the report, these things are discussions that have been going around by the ministry, the lead ministry in Ghana, that is Ministry of Communication. But again, one thing that we can do is dissemination. And UNESCO Ghana, we are in talks with UNESCO Ghana to even have some 2 or 3 dissemination activities before the Ethiopia program come next month. So the best way to get it to the ordinary man is one of them to actually integrate it into our curriculum. Institutions of higher learning, teacher trainings and all that, nursing training and all that, we need to build their capacity to understand what the ROM-X is. When we do this, these are people who are always in touch with the ordinary people. For instance, the Journalists Association of our various countries should be trained. Their capacity should be built when it comes to the ROM-X, the IUI, and then I'm sure they will also use it as a lens, the way we've been using the SDG as a lens, analyze situations. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. So a bit of work is involved in creating awareness about the indicators, their potential, and their strength at various levels. And it's good to hear that you're working with different stakeholders in driving this work home. Are there any other queries for our speakers from Kenya and Ghana? Otherwise, we will go back to the Q&A and follow up on any other queries that may be emerging from there. Any other queries? You can raise your hand and we will give you the floor. If not, I would encourage a review of some of the responses that are coming in. But also then at this point, we have another query. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and present your question. Thank you.
My name is Benjamin Akinweje, and I'm a research student. So the question I wanted to ask to the Ghana team and Mr. Simon Peter is, how did they constitute the multi-stakeholder board? How was this an existing organization or group, or did they need to constitute one to serve the purpose of their assessment? And how did they go about ensuring that it was truly multi-stakeholder? Thank you.
Thank you very much, questioner. Yeah, so interestingly, the multi-advisory board pre-existed before our contract, but it's truly a multi-stakeholder because there are people from the ministry, academia, the informal sector, and then I mean from almost all levels where that matter. So it's quite a multi-stakeholder group. So, but what I want to say is that it actually pre-existed, but they were not the only people who were engaged for this study. So what we also did was that we expanded the scope for the purposes of data collection. At least we involve youth, we involve market women. We even involved mobile money operators, I mean, representative from all these people. And the multi-stakeholder advisory board also include representatives from Ghana Journalists Association, the Cyber Security Authority, the National Communication. So from the regulatory side, yes, from the practitioner side, academia, the informal sector. So that is how the group is made up of. But beyond that, our data collection also expanded that scope for the purposes of our reporting and analysis. I hope this answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Simon Peter. I think let's also get a bit of an understanding from Grace on, Grace still here, she might have left already. Yes, on how they put together, unfortunately, she's not in the room anymore. But thanks for responding to that query around the composition of the multi-advisory group. We have another question from Cameroon, and then we will go to Xian Hong to take us through her reaction.
Much for your very brilliant presentation. I've learned a lot. I have a very simple question. In your recommendations, you mentioned that we could join the coalition IUI. So I just want to know what it takes to be part of the coalition. Thank you.
It takes nothing to be to join our dynamic coalition because it's a very free coalition. We created this dynamic coalition under the auspice of the Internet Governance Forum. So we literally, it's a kind of open for everyone and to join by registering our newsletter. As long as you agree to your own principles, you are interested to know more about the project, also may potentially want to push forward to have this success in your country. So we can use this dynamic coalition as a way to engage with UNESCO, also with other countries who already are on board to do the assessment. So we have a website, you can just register, and that's all. And if you want to have more substantial, really collaboration with us, you can drop me an email. I'll put my email address as well. We also have an Internet Indicator email address. That one also works. If you want to initiate a dialogue or consultation to really kick off a project to introduce a new country to our pipeline, I mean, we are always welcome you to start the conversation. We are also able to involve our colleagues in the field office covering your region and the country to join this. So dynamic coalition is really a kind of network. So feel free to join it. And also you can follow our events we are organizing on the IGF. We're also promoting the dynamic coalition on the regional IGF of Africa and ISCAP, many other international regions, and also RightsCon, even at FIFA, as Julia organized. So you are everywhere to keep you engaged. So if I can take this opportunity to also to add some answers to the question of multi-stakeholder advisory board. Julia, do allow me to just add a few more words?
Yes, please go ahead. The floor is open.
Thank you. Echo with my colleague and Simon and Ato. Thank you again for sharing the experience from Ghana. Ghana is a lucky country. You do have you are very advanced in many ways in terms of the internet governance, particularly on this kind of multi-stakeholder governance. You did have such a group pre-existed before we do this assessment, so which can be used as a basis to do this assessment. But in many other countries, they don't have such a arrangement like Ghana or maybe like Kenya. Kenya also has the same advantage. You know, they have the KickNet. They are already hosting a multi-stakeholder advisory network in the country running for many years. So it's very convenient. You don't need to create new things, but you just build on it. In many other countries, same for Brazil. That's why Brazil was the first country to do the assessment, because they have the CGI.br. They are having the multi-stakeholder advisory board institutionalized already in the country for many years. So for these countries, it's such a facilitating and conducive environment to do this assessment. But for other countries which might not be so much having this multi-stakeholder advisory group or network embedded in the national ecosystem, you have to start to compose this board by liaising with governments, liaising with the private sector, with all the actors in a reach, which are all having a key role in this internet digital governance in a country. That's why in reality it's maybe it's one of the biggest challenges for a nation state to succeed in this assessment, because in many countries they had a difficulty to compose such a inclusive advisory board which can be functional entire process even after the assessment. They can continue to function to support the implementation of the policy recommendations emerged from the assessment. So in reality, UNESCO and our implementing partner in the country will take lead to start mapping the key actors of the country who should be there. We have a dream list: Ministry of ICT, Ministry of Education, Parliament, the companies, the technical communities, the universities, and even some individuals, very prominent experts. And you start by mapping as much as possible the actors in the country, and then the role of government here is crucial. On one hand, before we kick off deploy any national assessment in any country, we really need to have the consensus green light from the leading ministry of the country. And in many countries, like in Ethiopia, we literally received the supporting letter from the Minister of ICT. And also recently, we are also receiving the request for support in conducting Rome assessment in Tanzania, also addressed by the minister to UNESCO. So we need that level of strong support from the ministry, from the government, which means that the government does perceive the relevance and the value of doing this assessment in the country, which means that they will also be open to use it. In many cases, this country they are dropping their national digital strategy, or they are doing certain review. They need we need a momentum, a good momentum. The government see the need as well to do the assessment. But on the other hand, by conducting a multi-stakeholder approach, which means that all the stakeholders are really participating in this conversation in an equal footing manner. So which means that no actor should really be dominant. So basically, that's exactly the spirit that governments will dialogue with the private sector, with the civil society, with the human rights advocates, with the engineers on one table to discuss how the digital ecosystem is like in this country, how what data we can provide, and what recommendations eventually we agree to. So it's very important to have very balanced multi-stakeholder advisory board and make sure it functions in the spirit of multi-stakeholder rather than the board being dominated by one type of actor or two, rather than reflecting universally the inputs from other actors, simply to make sure of the inclusiveness of the process. So that's what I can share about the MAB. And in the end, the MAB creation of functionality is also an outcome from this project. In many countries, they didn't have this process before, but since they are putting in place this assessment, it's a part of methodology. So they start to compose this. Then in some countries, when they succeeded, they will like it, and they will make this advisory board to be more sustainable even beyond the assessment. And that's what I can share for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that response. We have just around about 15 minutes left. And I'd like to once again say thank you for the time that has been made by all parties in person, in the remote hubs in Cameroon and in Somalia. We really appreciate the effort and time made to be a part of this conversation. But as part of that, I'd like to encourage joining the IGF Dynamic Coalition, where more of this conversation is taking place with the different actors there. How can it be driven forward? If you look at the agenda document shared, there is a link to it. So I'd encourage you to take a bit more time and make the most of that coalition in your respective countries. We have a query from Namibia. Please keep it short because we have to wind down. We will try to capture as many of the questions that have come through into a document so that those who may not have had direct access do also get to see what was queried as part of this webinar. Please go ahead and with your question from Namibia.
Thank you, Juliet, and thank you, Dr. Xianghong, CIPESA and UNESCO for organizing this very important call. This is the real Nashilongo now speaking, but we're really excited as Namibia will be undergoing its own national assessment. We made a lot of efforts, and we are really grateful to be working close with the local UNESCO office ahead of that. Maybe I don't know if you have a chance to respond to this, but one of the queries that we really have been facing with engaging with our government in particular has been how do we assess a country that doesn't have a lot of policies in place, especially on internet development? And their worry has been, will our report come out not looking very good? I mean, from our team of who did the proposal to do the national assessment for Namibia, what we have been responding was that this will provide a good opportunity for them to help understand what the new policies that they will be put in place will need, without necessarily going through rounds of consultation and looking for input, because this will help them understand really where are the needs in particular. So once again, thank you again to you, Juliet, and colleagues at CIPESA, and Xianghong and colleagues at UNESCO, both local and regional. We are excited to be doing this after talking about it for so long. I think for 5 or so years. thinking about Namibia assessment. But once again, thank you so much, and we are glad to have been here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nashilongo, for that question. I wasn't sure if it was the real Nashilongo or somebody else in Namibia. Your excitement is felt by all of us in different countries, I'd imagine, and we look forward to seeing what will come out of Namibia. Shanhong, before you respond to that question, let's get another from Cameroon, which you can respond to concurrently. In the event that the room closes us out, thank you very much. We have just under 10 minutes. So let's the question from Cameroon and see if we can get responses through quickly before our time runs out. Thank you, Cameroon.
Ok, merci Madame pour la parole donnée. Merci Madame pour la parole donnée. Je suis Théodore Aimé Mouchingam, coordonnateur IGF Cameroun. Oui, j'aimerais poser une question. Y a-t-il une méthodologie mise en place par l'UNESCO pour pouvoir évaluer l'impact des indicateurs sur les cibles? Si oui, sur quelle périodicité et sous quel format, s'il vous plaît?
Merci. Thank you for that question. Shanhong, are you able to respond?
Could you please repeat the question? Sorry, my internet was just muted somehow.
Okay, let's get the question from Cameroon again, please.
Ok, merci Madame. Oui, j'aimerais savoir s'il y a une méthodologie mise en place par l'UNESCO pour pouvoir évaluer l'impact des indicateurs sur les cibles. Si oui, à quelle fréquence et sous quel format?
Ah, merci. Donc, pas encore. Comme je dis, on vient de commencer à implémenter les évaluations dans le pays au niveau national. On est on vient de compléter environ peut-être 10 pays. Le processus dans 10 pays. Donc, avec ça, on va commencer prendre la première évaluation de l'impact peut-être l'année prochaine. Mais pour ça, donc, on n'a pas encore quelque chose pour ça, mais on est en train de développer un document ou quelque chose, peut-être aussi un sondage, en recherche pour faire ça. Mais avant ces étapes, on toujours on collecte l'histoire, les pratiques dans le pays après l'évaluation. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé après? Par exemple, en Bénin, on a déjà soutenu un nouvel projet qui est destiné pour renforcer l'agence statistique nationale dans ce pays. Ça, c'est exactement le compact, l'impact suite à notre évaluation. D'autres exemples, par exemple, même si en Allemagne, après l'évaluation, le résultat, le rapport, et aussi toutes les recommandations sont présentées à son Parlement plusieurs fois pour informer toutes les stratégies nationales. Donc, c'est déjà, et on a vu déjà plein de choses qui a eu lieu à cause de ces évaluations. Donc, si ça vous intéresse, n'hésitez pas à nous joindre à notre événement à IGF. Je viens de poster 2 liens de notre événement T0 le 28 novembre et aussi la session de dynamique pollution le 2e décembre. pouvez faire enregistrement et nous adjoindre y poser la question, mais aussi on va aussi faire mise en œuvre de la situation. Merci beaucoup pour ces questions. Yeah, and also lastly, I'd like to congratulate Namibia National for eventually securing the assessment in Namibia. I think that's exactly a very good example that to show that at the beginning it was the initiative from the Internet Society chapter in Namibia. Well, actually, we received a number of interest from Namibia, from another media organization, also from Internet Society. So we liaise with our field office in Namibia, and then our field office colleague liaise with the national government, with digital related government ministry and directions. Then we organized a number of meetings, briefings to explain what this project is, and then we get the green light consensus from the ministry, they support this project. And then we also managed to secure funding to support this assessment. So itself, this already, I mean, it's already a multi-stakeholder process. Imagine before we put in place assessment. I think the national goal can say more about that. But from my point of view, this 1 year and a half of dialogue is not a waste of time at all, but it's kind of curating, encouraging this multi-stakeholder dialogue. It shows the power of this Rome assessment because it can be driven by the civil society, by non-governmental actors who see the need, who want it, and then we eventually manage to get everybody on board, so we have the project secured. So I really encourage all of you, whether you are from academia or which or government, I mean, you all have a say here. You can really shape the process and initiate a new project in your country, or in your region, or in your organization. Whenever you see there's a value of it. That's my really last word. I'm also putting my email address, and you're also welcome to drop me an email if you need our support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We have just about 4 minutes left of the time that we had scheduled for this interaction. I'm sure it could go for a whole lot longer. We had one last pressing question from Jimmy Haguma in Uganda. Jimmy, are you able to make your question quick? But before he states his question, thank you very much to everyone here. We will be following up with you. We had wanted to do a group photo, but because of how the meeting was set up, we might not be able to do that, but we'll look for a different way of getting to know the faces behind many of these questions, the faces who are silently listening. We'll try our best to find a way to maximize on the presence of all of us in this room here today. Jimmy, if you are available, you can ask your question quick. Shen Hong, in your response, you're welcome to.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please make it short and quick because we have less than 2 minutes.
Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Am I clear now? Can I go ahead, please? Okay, from my side, I just wanted to hear from, thank you so much, dear consultant, on the particular issues of ROM-X. When you talk about the cross-cutting issues, I wanted you had to slightly expound what her experience has been with different states, or what were they looking at in their research paper in regard to the cross-cutting issues, especially as we look at the increase, for example, of extremism, as we look at increase in recruitment of young people that are using such platforms also to infringe on other people's privacy or rights. What were those cross-cutting issues? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jan Hong, in your response, the cross-cutting issues and a word of closing. Thank you.
Sorry again, I couldn't hear Jimmy clearly somehow because the technique, there's a lot of echoes on my side. Could you also summarize the question to me? I heard the last part about the privacy.
Yes, he was asking about the cross-cutting issues that have been picked up in the different countries that have been assessed. We can make it specific to Africa. I was looking at issues such as extremism, privacy, I believe, yes. But yeah, we have run out of time, so you're welcome to use that in your closing remarks as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you again, Juliet, and also to CIPESA for your wonderful initiative of come up with such a wonderful session with so many key actors and experts. I'm also learning a lot from all of you. I think the Rome indicators and the project can really be useful and instrumental for Africa, for every country on this continent, to reverse the digital divide, to harness the digital transformation for the African country to be the continent to have opportunity to have to harness all the potential of new technology for you to develop the country much better than before. And also because the indicator also has been already building on the lessons learned and the good practice from many other countries who have already developed the digital technology earlier than Africa. So for you, it's also another opportunity. For example, as you mentioned, the issue of privacy, which might not have existed for Africa since when we did the development of the indicator themselves. It's more a big issue for Europe, for US, for the countries. They have already very sophisticated application of the technology. Then they learn that the human rights, privacy are the first thing they are losing. That's why they put in place many regulations, laws, and institutions to protect this privacy. And for Africa, since you have lagged behind in terms of technical application, so this rights was not yet so much violated in Africa. So that's why. So even for many countries, you think, oh, then we don't have such a policy yet. For example, there are many countries that don't have a privacy law. They don't have a data protection framework in many countries in Africa. It's a good thing because we can start over to use the best practice to put in place the most comprehensive protection of privacy and data protection framework and regime in the country. That's exactly the case. In our existing assessment in many African countries, there have been very strong recommendations on privacy, on human rights issues, and to call for the law, the new law to be created, to call for the attention on the existing law, for example, the cybersecurity law, on their potential intrusiveness to the right to privacy and other human rights. I think the issues you have mentioned are really really important, and Rome can help Africa even better than other continents if we are using it thoroughly to our national context. So that's really my concluding remarks. That I look forward to engaging with all of you, and let's make internet to be universal, to be humanistic, and the best developed in Africa in the forthcoming decade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on that positive note about making the internet better for African Africans, I would like to bring this session to a close. And once again, appreciate all of you for making the time, our partner organizations, Yoneko in Malawi, Digital Shelter in Cameroon, Namchue in Namibia, and Protege QV in Cameroon. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your efforts in bringing together the very diverse group of participants, which have included academia, government representation, media, civil society. We look forward to seeing how we can push forward this conversation, which is really the start of something if we're interested in pursuing internet universality assessment in our respective countries. Let's keep an eye out on the various links that have been shared by Xiang Hong, but also keep an eye out on what we share on the CIPESA webpage. That's cipesa.org. And let us know your thoughts. We will be sharing with you the information from here. We'll also share a query form for you to provide your feedbacks or share any other questions that you may have pertaining to what has been discussed this afternoon. I know that the country organizations might have to go back to their physical meetings. So thank you once again for joining us here. And to everyone else, we look forward to engaging further. And yes, we can bring the meeting to a close at this point. We look forward to engaging. Please look out for Xiang Hong's email. It has been shared. I have shared mine as well. But also share your thoughts using the hashtag Internet Freedom Africa. We like to keep track on what people are thinking about, talking about in the online space. If you would like to write an article, please again do reach out to us. Our email addresses have been shared for your reference. And Xiang Hong, unless there's anything else you'd like to say, I would like to bring this meeting to a close.
No, thank you. That's all. And I hope to collaborate with you more in the future on the Internet Freedom Conference, also on this kind of capacity building workshop. Thank you.
Fantastic. And we just need to make a shout out to the Forum on Internet Freedom in Africa, FIF Africa event, which we recently hosted in Zambia. It is where Xiang Hong also presented the Internet Universality Indicators back when we hosted the event in Ghana. So this has been a long conversation running a couple of years, and we're pleased to be a part of this collaboration with UNESCO in driving this awareness to more and more people in different parts of the continent. Great then. Thank you everybody for your time. We look forward to engaging with you further on this. Please look out for additional coming from us. Thank you.